So welcome back everybody, Mark with Exotic Car Play Place. Today we are at a BMW dealer to discuss if BMWs in fact are reliable. Are BMWs reliable? Lots of people are asking that question, so we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to share with you what my opinion is on the matter and why that actually is the case. I hope you've checked out my series because I've addressed a lot of these questions and given you very, very good specific examples of cars that are reliable and cars that are lacking reliability in terms of the BMW world. So today we're going to talk in generalities, are BMWs reliable? So generally speaking, there's two ways to answer this question. Are they reliable? First part, short answer, no, they're not reliable. But generally speaking, that's consistent with a lot of German upscale premium brands like Mercedes, Audi, BMW, Porsche. They're all premium brands. They all lack complete reliability. They don't have the reliability that you might find in a Lexus. For some reason, Lexus, they've nailed it out of the park in terms of overall reliability. The worst part, though, unfortunately, with a Lexus is it lacks the performance and driving dynamics in most cases, with the exception of, say, for the LFA, for example. They generally don't have the same exciting levels of driving enjoyment that you'll get out of a BMW. They don't have that same level. I've driven Lexuses, and they're great cars and they're reliable, but they don't quite have the overall driving appeal. And so that's why people choose to buy the BMW brand or any of the other German cars. If it weren't for the driving experience, why would you buy these other cars? Because they bring something to the table. So let's get rolling in this and explain this whole concept. So firstly, number one, yes, there are examples of BMWs that are really bad. They either have catastrophic engine failure related issues, they have inherently really bad design flaws, or they're just poorly built, poorly engineered, and poorly constructed vehicles. There are exception cases like that. But generally as a rule, when we're talking about reliability, 80-90% of the make is very, very solidly built. And it's not the engine, it's not the transmission that's ever the problem with most of these cars. It's all that little stuff in between. And people ask, like, well, if I maintain my BMW, is that going to save my butt? Well, sadly enough, maintenance isn't usually going to do that for you. I mean, it's easy to say, well, you need to maintain your BMW and then you'll be trouble-free. But in reality, it's not about maintaining it all the time. Sure, oil changes, frequent oil services, coolant flushes, brake flushes, that's good stuff for the engine, for the brakes. You know, doing your coolant flushes, that'll save your water pump in some cases. The oil changes will often save your engine if you do this stuff religiously. That'll keep the engine running well. But those aren't usually the issues that BMWs are faced with. It's usually the other problems. It's all the ancillary bits. And this is a consistent problem with BMW. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the German cars are very, very complex today. Now you have things like actuators, modules, drive-by-wire, SMG transmissions, dual clutch transmissions, whole host of new electronic technologies. You've got iDrive systems, Apple CarPlay, all sort of plug-ins, heated seats, power seats, electronic gadgets for mirrors and controls overall, things that allow you to move things automatically with your key fob, or a one-touch button that operates a whole different host of things. There's a lot of complexities built into these cars. They even said when the E60 M5 came out that the computing systems within the E60 were more complex and more powerful than the NASA space shuttle. Would you believe that? I do. That's why these cars have inherent issues, because there's so much complexity injected into these cars. Now, if you can get around that and you're not worried about replacing the odd module or a relay that fails, and if you want to stay ahead of that stuff and just be willing to tolerate that, the rest of these cars are well crafted. So this is part two to this answer. The long answer, of course, being they are not inherently unreliable as a rule. You want unreliability? I've got great examples of unreliability. How about my Lamborghini Gallardo right here? These cars have problems with the clutches. The clutch's lunch at 10 to 20,000 kilometers is all you're going to get out of a clutch on this car. How about cars that start on fire because of power steering lines? So you've got clutch issues, power steering lines. You've got things that go on these cars that aren't that reliable either. How about I'll show you some other examples. So let's talk about some of these other problems. Well, I don't know if you guys seen the review I did on this Mitsubishi Eclipse. Here's an example. Everybody wants to blame BMW for being unreliable, but they're not the only ones that have their inherent problems. This car here only has 150,000 kilometers and it burns a quart of oil every 2,000 kilometers. So it's got heavy oil consumption. Also, did you see the video where I was doing the review on this car? I went to close the door, boom, and the handle ripped off. Wonderful 3.8 liters of V6 Fury. What in the hell just happened here? Well, that looks like something that you won't find typical in a BMW. So anyway, let's get moving. So that's a problem. These aren't all that reliable. How about my truck? This here is my toy hauler here. This pickup truck is actually the vehicle I use to haul, if I'm transporting the Lamborghini or the boat. We do boating in the summertime. So you always need a pickup truck to haul the car around, haul the boat around. This is the truck here. So this thing has had plagued with issues, and I'm going to pop the hood here and I'll talk about that a little bit. Now, one thing, of course, this piece of junk was this right here. So this is a Dodge pickup. I went through 3 of these already. This truck only has 90,000 kilometers and they always get a leak in this area. So it's a weakness in these cars. Garbage. Another issue, I've replaced a water pump on this piece of garbage already, a starter, and word has it that transmissions are also weak on these trucks. So I am also expecting a transmission to go on this at some point. So this thing is not lacking in its issues. So Dodge has its problems, Mitsubishi has its problems, Ford definitely has its problems. And we know Fords, they burn up like a candle, essentially. I'm not picking on any brands in particular. All I'm simply stating is that every brand seems to have its Achilles tendon. And so the BMWs often are similar to that. And I'm going to explain a little more about that. That shows that any brand has its weaknesses. And BMW is no exception. We're not pretending that BMW is a perfect brand. They have their issues. But I'll tell you one thing. There's nothing worse than putting money into a vehicle that is weak, it's loose, it's wobbly, it has a weak drivetrain inherently from the factory. At least with a BMW, a lot of these faults tell you what's going on. So when you replace the respective part, it helps optimize the driving experience. The idea is to drive the car in its perfect state. How many people have you ever seen? I know people that have driven around in Hondas with engine lights on permanently, and they never check to see what the problem is. Well, the vehicle never seems to drive any differently for some reason, and it just keeps on trucking. But that's obviously not good for anything. Obviously, if there's an issue related that actually spits out a code, that's trying to tell you something. And I've seen lots of people driving with engine lights on for years, and they don't even worry about it. At least with the BMW, if it puts it into limp mode, puts the car into limp mode because you have some failure, it doesn't allow you to drive with that failure active. Because that failure may not directly impact the way the car drives overall, it does in fact have some sort of an issue, and the car, of course, will spit out a code. Now, there's no secret, these cars are not short of engine lights. And so that's really what this all comes down to. And so if you really want to get down to it, the BMWs, are they that unreliable, or is it just that the brand likes to quickly identify the fault, let the driver and the user know what it is, and then you can take care of it so you can be on your motoring way and enjoy the car in its perfect running state? That is a big part of why BMW does that. It's very complex systems on board, and of course when something small fails or it's slightly out of sync, it will give you a code. That does seem like an unreliability issue. But that being said, generally speaking, it appears that BMWs are getting better and better as time goes on. They're recognizing some of these issues and they're making the cars better. So generally as a rule, seem to have less and less problems, which is kind of ironic being that there's more complexities as cars move on. There's more safety features. There's more mechanical technology in place. For example, like turbocharging now, where there wasn't in a lot of the cars 15, 20 years ago. We didn't have that. And now if you look at more recent JD Powers and also the consumers reports, you'll notice BMWs are coming up in ranking. They're getting better and better in recent years than they were, say, 10, 12 years ago, going through the E60 era. They are getting better, and they're ranked better by the customers. And should we believe the consumers? Absolutely. They're the people that have to experience a roadside hauling when the car dies on the side of the road and you've got to call a tow truck. They're the people that have direct vested interest. They're the ones you want to listen to. And so those are where these things are coming from. You can look at a magazine and it'll tell you how good the car drives, a road and track, a car and drive. It'll tell you how good the cars perform and drive, but they don't tell you long-term issues. The long-term issues come from the JD, it comes from Consumer Report, and generally I would say as a rule, BMWs are very well constructed. The doors, things are built like a vault. They're well made, they wear well, they don't rust very quickly, and that's one thing I've noticed, particularly with the BMWs. I've had other German makes, I won't mention the names at this time, but they actually had premature rust set in. The BMWs I find typically a little bit more resistant to rust, especially in the northern climates. The doors are solid, everything is solid. The driving experience is very tight, and as a rule, the BMW is a very, very well-made car. The only problem, again, it's some of the little electronics, the modules, the relays, the actuators, the pumps, those little things which, of course, add up to a lot of money over time, but those are relatively small things. The core car is very, very well constructed, and that's really what it boils down to. And that's not unique for BMW. Audi, Benz, Porsche, generally as a rule, are very well made. So guys, that's all I'm going to talk about today, but hey, I'm going to throw this out here for the next video. You guys let me know. I was recently in California, and I just want to share this, guys. I had some experience with some McLarens, and I just want to ask you guys, if you guys want to see any of that content, I kind of had a little comparison between a McLaren 570 and a Lamborghini Huracan. Now, I know it's kind of out of flavor for the BMW content, but if for those of you guys who are interested in seeing that, if I see at least 50 references in the comment section below that say 570, I will create that video and I will share with you my McLaren experience in California from this summer. So anyway, thanks everybody. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, like, turn on the notifications, and we'll talk to you real soon. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.